Today we're here to talk about the power of culture. Now, you could be forgiven for thinking, why are we doing a future of research event on culture? Culture isn't new. We've been helping our clients understand and shape culture for decades now. But I think we could argue that it's never been more important to understand culture than today. Despite the fact that there's more and more data available on people's behaviour, people continue to think and act in ways that baffle and surprise us. Cultural insight can help us understand these behaviours in ways that perhaps other forms of analysis might miss or overlook. But what do we mean by culture? Perhaps it would help to start off with a definition. Culture is everywhere. Culture is how we dress. It's where we live. It's how we vote. As we'll hear from Marina at The Economist shortly, it's what we read. Matthew from Public Health England will tell us it's what you eat and it's what you drink. And my colleague Ollie will even be explaining to us that culture is about how you look after your pets. Culture, put simply, is a series of sort of recognisable patterns of shared meanings. Every single image, product, service, thing, or communication has a meaning. And it's these shared meanings that create culture. We can also see culture in our learnt behaviours. So as we learn and develop and think about how we communicate with each other and interact with the world around us, this becomes very culturally specific. I'll give an example. Drinking tea in the UK. We love to put the kettle on and have a natter. This is a very stereotypical way of describing Brits. But drinking tea is actually very interesting. So in the UK, this is about creating conversation. This is about connecting with people. This is about trying to understand each other, and it cuts across class, which is extremely powerful in the UK. Now, people also drink tea in China, but this isn't about having a brew and a natter. In China, they have a tea ceremony. This is about creating respect. This is about demonstrating your good hosting abilities and welcoming people into your home. So if we take a look at this image, this was one when May met President Xi in China. You could argue that this image is, you can almost feel the cultural clash here. So May has got a minuscule cup and she is wondering whether the conversation is going to be very short, whereas President Xi is looking like he doesn't feel that he's getting the respect that perhaps he thinks he deserves as a host. Now, I joke, but actually this is the sort of thing that can happen if we don't understand the cultural context. I'll give you an example in advertising. So when Procter & Gamble launched their Pampers nappies in Japan, they used an image of a stork on their advertising and packaging. Well, why not? This is a signal, a sign that we all understand. A stork carrying a baby is the delightful arrival of a newborn child, right? Wrong. In Japan, when P&G did some research and spoke to some consumers, they found out that consumers were actually extremely confused by this image. Not just confused, they were actually very concerned about the fact there was a giant bird with a baby dangling from it in a blanket. Now, this is because this isn't part of Japanese folklore. Storks do not deliver babies, nor do they come from a cabbage patch. Actually, babies in Japan are delivered in giant peaches. Now, this is extremely important to understand. So fortunately, Procter & Gamble changed their advertising and their packaging. They removed the giant birds from them, and it's become a success story. Of course, they've sold lots of nappies over there now. So just in summary then, culture is these shared meanings, these learnt behaviours that we talk about. It's an ever-changing ecosystem. It is about how it basically shapes how we experience the world around us. It is very simply how we belong.
So there's never been a better time to increase our cultural understanding. And that's because we live in increasingly complex and unpredictable times. Being attentive to culture, whether we're politicians or brands, can help to explain why people with different cultural frameworks think, behave and act in different ways. Steve Bannon gets this. The former chief strategist to Trump, former chairman of Breitbart, sees the incredible power of culture in shaping people's outlooks and the need to understand it. This is a brilliant quote that I love from Cambridge Analytica whistleblower Christopher Wiley. So he described how Steve Bannon saw politics as downstream of culture. So to change politics, you need to change culture. Trump is like a pair of Crocs. So how do you get from people thinking, oh, totally ugly as they are, to the moment where everyone is wearing them? And that's the inflection point that Christopher Wiley describes Steve Bannon as being most interested in. And in the UK, of course, the vote for Brexit has shown how powerful cultural forces can be. People didn't vote for Brexit for economic reasons. Analysis undertaken by us since the EU referendum has shown that the drivers of Brexit were actually cultural, namely nativism and cultural tensions around immigration. And it's these cultural tensions that are leading to a retreat into tradition, where 49% of us in the UK say that we would like our country the way it used to be. And amongst Brexit voters, that increases to 59%, where 60% of us feel that the world is changing too fast. And 81% of us say that traditions are an important part of society. Brexit has taught us that we need to step out of our cultural bubbles and take the time to be attentive and actually empathise with the cultural values of people that aren't us. And in fact, in the last year, we've worked with Google to do just this, to explore the experiences and outlook of people living in Brexit voting areas outside London. And in the last couple of months, we've been working with Trinity Mirror, one of the UK's largest news publishers, to understand the changing nature of mass market culture. We've only just come out of the field. Andrew Tens is in the audience. Thank you for letting us share a couple of the headlines here. But the headlines are this: the combined forces of globalisation and the internet are leading to a proliferation and fragmentation of cultures. We're seeing new emergent cultural forces. And we're also seeing the rise in the dominance of hybrid and local cultures. The fact is, culture is becoming more complicated and harder to decipher. The way in which culture emerges has undergone significant shifts. It's less top-down, it's less London out, it's less linear and it's less predictable. What it is instead is more interactive. It's instead faster, more fragmented and more diverse. A focus on culture then, or cultural analysis, is a powerful way of examining change and difference. So we need to take the time to investigate culture, and I've got an example here which should make that really clear. A colleague recently moved to the Orkney Islands. She saw an ad for a spinning class, and she turned up to the church hall in her gym kit, only to find out that it was, in fact, a weaving class. So let this be a lesson to us all. We need to invest in cultural understanding, or we can get it horribly wrong. We're going to get on to the next. There we go. So, cultural relevance has to be the ultimate ambition for all of us. And in this new, more complex cultural landscape, that is less easy. I'm sure many of you have seen the Nike Londoner ad, and if you haven't, I suggest you look it up on YouTube. It's a brilliant ad, and it was hailed for its cultural relevance and its freshness. It reflects young Londoners' lives back at them in a way that is authentic, meaningful and powerful. But of course, there's also been a debate about how culturally relevant it is to people outside London, and that's worth considering as well. So we need to develop a cultural mindset, And that's because our cultural values define everything that we do. Whether we're advertisers or brands, whether we're marketeers, strategists or policymakers, we need to take the time to invest in and understand culture. We need to view our challenges through a cultural lens. To steal a phrase from Nike, just do it.